You ever watch a friendship that looked unbreakable just collapse right in front of your eyes? Like 1 minute it's loyalty, respect, years of history, and the next it's accusations, betrayal, and a whole industry questioning everything they thought was real. Because that's exactly what just happened in Houston. And trust me, nobody saw this coming. For over 2 decades, Sauce Walka and Johnny Dang weren't just doing business. They were locked in like family. We're talking about millions of dollars in jewelry, custom pieces that defined an entire era of hip-hop culture, and a bond that seemed untouchable. Johnny Dang wasn't just a jeweler, he was the jeweler, the man behind some of the most iconic grills and chains in the game. And Sauce? He was one of his most loyal clients, always showing love, always representing. But then, everything flipped. It started with a moment that looked small at first, just another flashy reveal, another big flex for the cameras. Sauce Walka stepping out, showing off a brand new $1 million grill, shining, flawless, impossible to ignore. But it wasn't just the grill that had people talking, it was what he said right after. "I'm taking out the Johnny Dangs and upgrading." That one line, that one statement, it hit like a bomb. Fans were shocked, the streets started buzzing, and behind the scenes, emotions ran high in a way nobody expected. Because this wasn't just about jewelry anymore, this felt personal. And then came the accusations. Quiet whispers turned into loud conversations. People started asking questions that nobody wanted to answer. Was Johnny Dang really giving his best work to everyone? Or was there something else going on behind those $1 million pieces? Was loyalty being taken for granted? Or worse, being used? And when Sauce Walka finally started speaking, really speaking, it wasn't just frustration you could hear. It was something deeper, something that sounded like years of trust slowly cracking. Now the entire hip-hop world is watching, because what started as a simple upgrade might actually be exposing something way bigger than anyone imagined. And if even half of these claims are true, then this isn't just drama. This is a scandal that could shake a $200 million empire to its core. The moment that line hit the internet, everything started moving fast in a way nobody could control. What looked like a simple flex quickly turned into a full-blown situation that had the entire Houston scene watching closely. People weren't just talking about the grill anymore, they were talking about what it meant. Because for years, Sauce Walka had been one of the loudest supporters of Johnny Dang. Every time he stepped out, every time he showed off his ice, it was understood where it came from. There was history behind it, real money behind it, and a level of trust that doesn't come easy in a business like that. This wasn't just a customer and a jeweler, this was loyalty built over time. But the energy shifted the second that new grill was revealed. Behind the cameras, people close to both sides started picking up on the tension. One insider said the room went quiet for a second after Sauce made that statement. Not the kind of silence where people don't know what's going on, but the kind where everybody knows something just changed. And it didn't take long before Johnny Dang heard about it. According to sources, Johnny was caught completely off guard, not because Sauce got a new piece, but because of how public it was and how it was framed. One person close to Johnny said he kept replaying the video over and over, trying to understand where things went wrong. He didn't have to say it like that, the source claimed Johnny said during the private conversation. He could have just done his thing without putting my name in it. At first, Johnny tried to handle it quietly. He reached out, trying to talk things through, trying to understand what pushed Sauce to make a move like that. Because from his perspective, nothing major had happened. Business was business, and everything had always been straight. But on the other side, Sauce wasn't seeing it that way at all. For him, this wasn't something that just happened overnight. This had been building for a long time. Small things that didn't sit right, moments that felt off, decisions that didn't make sense. And according to people around him, he had been talking about it privately for months before anything went public. One close friend of Sauce described it like this. He felt like he wasn't getting the same energy back that he was giving, like he was spending big money, showing love, but not getting treated like he should have been. And that's where the real tension started, because in the jewelry game, perception is everything. It's not just about what you buy, it's about how you're treated, what you represent, and how your relationship with your jeweler looks to the outside world. When artists feel like they're not being
valued properly, it hits deeper than just money. Things got even more complicated when people started bringing up how other artists were being treated. There were rumors floating around that certain out-of-town rappers were getting special deals, free pieces, or extra attention that longtime customers weren't getting. Nobody had solid proof at first, but the conversations kept getting louder. Why is he giving them free stuff but charging full price here? One person was heard asking during a private gathering. And once that question got out, it didn't go away. Fans started digging, comparing photos, looking at posts, trying to piece things together. Social media turned into a full investigation, with people pointing out patterns, screenshots, and old videos that suddenly looked different in this new context. And right in the middle of all this, Sauce Walka wasn't backing down. Instead of calming things down, he started speaking more openly, not directly naming everything, but saying enough to keep people paying attention. His tone wasn't just confident, it was frustrated, like someone who felt overlooked after years of loyalty. "I don't want nothing free," he said in one clip that started circulating everywhere. "I want what I pay for, and I want the best." That line hit just as hard as the first one, because now it wasn't just about switching jewelers. It sounded like he was questioning what he had been getting all along. And that's when things really started getting messy. People from inside the industry began speaking up, some anonymously, some not. Stories started coming out about how the business really worked behind closed doors, not just about pricing, but about materials, sourcing, and the way deals were structured. One insider claimed that not every piece was exactly what customers thought it was. "Most artists don't know the difference," the insider said. "They trust the jeweler. They trust what they're told." That statement alone was enough to shake people. Because if that was true, then this wasn't just about one situation. This could be something bigger. At the same time, Johnny Dang was starting to feel the pressure. His phone was blowing up, people asking questions, clients wanting reassurance. The reputation he'd built over years was suddenly being questioned in a matter of days. And even though he hadn't publicly addressed everything yet, those close to him said he was getting frustrated. "He feels like this is disrespect," one person said, "like everything he built is being thrown under the bus." But the more he stayed quiet, the louder the speculation got. Fans were shocked at how fast everything escalated. One minute it was a normal day in the culture, the next it felt like the whole jewelry game was under a spotlight. And then came another twist that nobody expected. People started connecting Sauce's new jeweler to Johnny's past. Names were being mentioned, old relationships brought back up, and suddenly it wasn't just about a customer switching shops. It started looking like something way more personal. Because when you take your business somewhere else, that's one thing. But when you take it to someone who knows your former jeweler inside and out, that hits different. And that's exactly what made the situation even more complicated than anyone thought at the beginning. Because the more people looked into it, the clearer it became that this wasn't just a random switch or a simple business decision. There was history behind it, and not the kind that fades quietly over time. The name that kept coming up was Gio. At first, most fans didn't think much of it. They just saw another jeweler stepping in, delivering a bigger piece, a louder statement, something that fit Sauce Walka's vision. But inside the industry, the reaction was completely different. People who knew the background immediately understood why this move felt personal. Gio wasn't just another competitor. He had once been part of Johnny Dang's operation. He had worked closely, learned the process, understood how things were done behind the scenes. And when someone like that steps out and starts building their own lane, it already creates tension. But when a major client follows them, that's when things get serious. One insider described the moment they realized who made the grill. That's when everybody looked at each other like, nah, this ain't just business anymore. And the timing made it even more intense. Because according to people familiar with the situation, there had already been quiet tension between Johnny and Gio long before Sauce made his move. Things didn't end smoothly when Gio left. There were disagreements, conversations that didn't go the way they were supposed to, and a feeling on both sides that something wasn't right. So when Sauce showed up with $1 million piece made by Gio, it didn't just look like an upgrade. It looked like a
statement. And Johnny felt it immediately. Sources close to him said his reaction wasn't just about losing a client. It was about who that client chose. The sense of betrayal hit deeper because it involved someone who had once been trusted within his own circle. "You could have went anywhere," one person claimed Johnny said during a heated conversation, "but you went there?" On the other side, Sauce wasn't trying to hide anything. He leaned into it. He started explaining why he made the decision, and the way he described it made it clear that this wasn't just about loyalty or history. It was about control, about vision, about feeling like he wasn't being heard. "I had something in my mind," he said during one moment that quickly went viral, and I needed somebody who was going to make it happen, no matter what. That line added another layer to the situation, because now it wasn't just about business practices or pricing, it was about creative differences. Sauce felt like he was being limited, like his ideas weren't being taken seriously, like he was being told what could or couldn't be done instead of being given what he wanted. And in a culture where image is everything, that kind of limitation doesn't sit well. People around Sauce said he had been pushing for bigger designs, more extreme concepts, things that would stand out in a way nobody had seen before. But every time he brought those ideas up, there was hesitation. It won't fit right. It's too much. It's not going to look good. Those were the kinds of responses he kept hearing, and over time, it started to build frustration. Because in his mind, he wasn't paying for opinions, he was paying for results. And when Gio stepped in, the energy was completely different. He didn't tell me what couldn't be done, Sauce said. He told me we gonna figure it out. That contrast became a key part of the narrative. Fans were shocked at how quickly the story was evolving. What started as a simple comparison between two grills had turned into a deeper conversation about trust, creative freedom, and respect. But then things took another turn, because while Sauce was speaking about vision and execution, other voices started bringing up something much more serious. The word fake started getting thrown around. At first, it was subtle, just comments here and there, people questioning the quality of certain pieces, asking whether everything was exactly what it was claimed to be. But as more people joined the conversation, those whispers got louder. And then came the accusations. Some industry insiders began claiming that not all diamonds being sold were natural, that some pieces were made using lab-created stones, but priced and presented as something else entirely. The moment that idea hit social media, everything changed again. Because now this wasn't just about personal disagreements or creative differences, this was about trust on a completely different level. Fans were shocked, trying to understand what that even meant. For many, a diamond is a diamond. But within the industry, the difference between natural and lab-created stones isn't small. It affects value, pricing, and perception in a major way. And if those lines were being blurred, intentionally or not, it raised serious questions. One anonymous voice claimed, "If you paying top dollar, you deserve to know exactly what you're getting. No confusion, no shortcuts." That statement started getting shared everywhere. People began looking back at old purchases, old videos, old chains and grills that had been proudly shown off over the years. Suddenly, everything was being re-examined under a new lens. And in the middle of all that, Johnny Dang finally started responding. His tone wasn't calm. It was emotional, defensive, and clearly affected by everything that was happening. "You can shop wherever you want," he said in one clip that quickly spread online, "but don't put my name in something if it ain't right." The message was clear. He wasn't going to stay silent anymore. But even as he spoke, the conversation wasn't slowing down. If anything, it was getting more intense. Because now you had both sides talking, both sides standing firm, and an entire audience trying to figure out what the truth really was. And just when it seemed like things couldn't get any more complicated, another layer started to unfold that nobody was ready for. And just when it seemed like things couldn't get any more complicated, another layer started to unfold that nobody was ready for. Because now the conversation wasn't just coming from fans or random insiders anymore. It started coming from people who had actually been inside the business. Quiet at first, almost like they were testing the waters. But once a few voices spoke up, others followed. Stories began surfacing about long hours, high pressure, and numbers that didn't always match what people expected. And while nobody was dropping full proof on camera, the consistency in what was being said started raising eyebrows. One former
worker described it in a way that caught everyone's attention. "We were moving a lot of product, way more than people think. And sometimes the way things were explained to clients, it wasn't always as detailed as it should have been." That statement alone sent social media into another frenzy. Because now people weren't just speculating, they felt like they were getting pieces of an inside perspective. And then Gio's name came back into the spotlight again. Old posts started resurfacing, clips from interviews, comments that people had ignored before but now suddenly felt important. In one of those clips, Gio hinted at feeling undervalued during his time working under Johnny, mentioning how much revenue he helped generate compared to what he was receiving. Fans were shocked hearing those numbers being thrown around. Millions in business, but not getting treated like it, one user commented under a repost that went viral. And that idea started connecting dots for people. If someone inside felt like that, then what else was happening behind the scenes? At the same time, Sauce Walka wasn't holding back either. His tone shifted from frustration to something more direct. He wasn't just explaining his side anymore. He was standing on it. Every clip, every statement carried more weight, more confidence, like someone who had already made up his mind and wasn't worried about how it would be received. "I don't care how it looked," he said in one moment that got shared everywhere. "I know what I wanted, and I know what I wasn't getting." That line hit hard because it wasn't just about jewelry anymore. It sounded like someone who felt overlooked, someone who had invested years, money, and loyalty, and was now realizing that maybe the relationship wasn't as balanced as he thought. And that's when the emotional side of the situation really started showing. People close to both sides described conversations that weren't calm at all, voices raised, words said that couldn't be taken back, frustration turning into something personal. "It didn't have to go this way," one mutual associate said, but once it got public, there was no turning back. And that's the thing about situations like this. Once the internet gets involved, everything moves faster, louder, and more intense than anyone expects. Fans were picking sides. Some stood with Sauce, saying he had every right to speak up if he felt something wasn't right. Others defended Johnny, pointing out his years in the game, his reputation, and everything he had built from the ground up. "You don't get to where he is by playing people," one supporter wrote. But right under that, another comment replied, "Or maybe that's exactly how you get there." And just like that, the divide got deeper. The culture itself started debating, not just about this situation, but about the entire jewelry game. How much of it is real? How much of it is image? How much of it is trust? And then came the detail that really shook people: the difference between natural diamonds and lab-created ones. For some, it didn't matter. A diamond is a diamond. It shines the same, looks the same. But for others, especially those spending serious money, the distinction was everything. Because the value isn't just in how it looks, it's in what it is. And if those two things weren't being clearly separated, then that raised serious questions. One jeweler from another city weighed in anonymously. "There's nothing wrong with lab diamonds. The problem is when you don't tell people what they're buying. That's where it crosses a line." That comment spread fast, because it didn't attack anyone directly, but it pointed at the core of the issue: transparency. And suddenly, that word started coming up everywhere. People weren't just asking who was right or wrong anymore. They were asking what really goes on behind closed doors in an industry built on image, trust, and high prices. Meanwhile, Johnny Dang's responses were becoming more emotional. You could hear it in his voice, see it in the way he spoke. This wasn't just business for him, it was personal. Years of work, relationships, reputation, all being questioned in real time. "Y'all don't understand what I built," he said in one clip. "This ain't just jewelry, this is my life." And that perspective hit a different note. Because while Sauce was talking about his experience as a client, Johnny was talking about his experience as someone who built everything from nothing. And that's where the situation became more than just right or wrong. It became layered. Two different perspectives, both feeling justified, both feeling disrespected in their own way. And right in the middle of that, the community was watching, reacting, debating, trying to figure out what to believe. But even with all the noise, one thing was clear: this wasn't going away anytime soon. Because just as people started thinking the situation had reached its peak, something happened behind the scenes that changed the tone of everything once again. Something
happened behind the scenes that changed the tone of everything once again. And it didn't come from a post, a video, or a statement online. It came from a real-life moment, face-to-face, no cameras controlling the narrative, no edits shaping the story. Word started spreading that both sides were in the same place at the same time during a community event in Houston. At first, people didn't believe it. After everything that had been said, after all the tension, nobody expected them to even be in the same room, let alone interact. But then clips started surfacing. Not loud, not dramatic, just short glimpses of them standing near each other, talking quietly, body language that didn't look aggressive, didn't look hostile, but definitely didn't look normal either. People zoomed in, slowed the videos down, trying to read every movement. What did he say? Did you see his face? That didn't look friendly at all. Fans were shocked because this was the first time since everything went public that they were seeing them together without the filter of social media. No captions, no explanations, just raw interaction. According to people who were actually there, the conversation started tense. You could feel it, one attendee said, like everybody around them knew this wasn't just a casual talk. They didn't raise their voices, they didn't make a scene,
but the energy was heavy. Years of history, weeks of public tension, and a whole lot of things left unsaid, all sitting in that moment. One source claimed that Johnny was the first to speak. "Why you had to do it like that?" he asked, not aggressively, but with a tone that carried weight. And Sauce didn't hesitate. "Because it wasn't right," he replied. Simple words, but loaded with meaning. That exchange alone said more than any video or post could. It wasn't about proving anything to the public anymore. It was about how both of them felt in that moment. The conversation went on longer than people expected, back and forth, calm but serious, each side explaining their perspective without the noise of the internet in between. No interruptions, no comment section, just two people trying to address something that had gotten way bigger than both of them. It wasn't just about the grill, another witness said. They were talking about everything: the past, the business, the respect. And for the first time since all of this started, the tone began to shift. It didn't turn friendly right away. It didn't suddenly erase everything that happened, but it changed. You could see it in their body language. The tension eased, the distance between them got smaller, the conversation started sounding less like an argument and more like an understanding. And that's when the unexpected happened. They shook hands. Not for the cameras, not for attention, just a simple moment that carried a lot more meaning than people realized. Those few seconds were enough to send social media into another wave of reactions. They squashed it? Is it really over? What about everything that was said? Fans were confused, surprised, some even frustrated. Because after all the drama, all the accusations, all the questions, it ended in a way nobody predicted. But even though that moment brought some level of closure, it didn't answer everything. The bigger questions were still there. People were still asking about the diamonds, about the pricing, about the treatment of clients, about everything that had been brought into the spotlight. Because even if two individuals can move past something personally, that doesn't mean the conversation just disappears. And that's exactly what happened. The situation between Sauce Walka and Johnny Dang might have calmed down, but the impact didn't. Artists started paying closer attention. Clients began asking more questions. People who never cared about the details before suddenly wanted to know exactly what they were getting. One comment summed it up perfectly. "This ain't just about them anymore. This changed how people look at the whole game." And that shift is something that doesn't go away overnight. Because once doubt is introduced, once trust is questioned, it takes more than a handshake to completely fix it. At the same time, there were those who saw the situation differently. Some respected how it ended. "Real ones handle it in person," one fan wrote. Others felt like things were left unresolved. "Too many questions still unanswered," another comment read. And that divide respected exactly what this situation had become. Not just a disagreement, not just a moment of drama, but something that forced people to look deeper at relationships, at business, at trust. For Johnny, this was about protecting everything he built. For Sauce, this was about standing on what he believed was right. And for everyone watching, it became a lesson. Because in a world where image matters so much, where money moves fast, and where trust is often assumed rather than verified, situations like this remind people to look closer. To ask
Questions, to understand what they're investing in, and to realize that even the strongest relationships can shift when expectations don't match reality. In the end, what looked like a simple upgrade turned into something much bigger, something that shook conversations, exposed tensions, and forced an entire culture to pause and think. And even though the situation between them may have cooled down, the effect it left behind is still being felt. So at the end of all this, what really happened here? Was this just a misunderstanding between two people who had years of history? Or did Sauce Walka actually expose something deeper that nobody wanted to talk about? Because let's be real for a second, this wasn't just about a grill, and it definitely wasn't just about switching jewelers. This turned into a situation that had the entire culture questioning trust, loyalty, and what really goes on behind the scenes in a business where image is everything. Fans are still shocked at how fast everything escalated. One moment it was respect and history, and the next it was accusations, tension, and a public fallout that nobody expected. Emotions ran high, sides were taken,
and for a while it felt like there was no coming back from it. And even though they met, talked, and seemingly moved past it, the questions didn't disappear. Did Sauce Walka have a point when he spoke out? Was Johnny Dang really treating different clients differently? And what about those claims people keep bringing up about diamond quality and transparency? Because if even a small part of that is true, then this situation might have opened the door to something much bigger than just one relationship. And now it's your turn. What do you think really happened here? Was this a betrayal or just business? Should loyalty matter more when millions are involved, or is it always about the deal? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this conversation is far from over. And if you made it this far, you already know you're tapped into the real stories that nobody else is breaking down like this. So make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. Because trust me, we're just getting started, and the next story might be even crazier than